Welcome to this explainer on the Grade 7 English curriculum. Whether you realize it or not, we are all surrounded by stories every single day, from the shows we binge watch on the weekend to the crazy anecdotes we tell our friends. But how exactly are those stories built? Today, we're zooming in on a specific lesson, Unit 5, Lesson 3, Short Stories Evidence Discussion. We're going to explore exactly how character motives drive a story's conflict and how gathering evidence changes when you move from a storybook to a script. Here's our agenda for today. We'll start with the English 7 Roadmap. Then we'll be unpacking short stories, bringing drama to life, comparing story versus script, and finally, wrapping up with your learning outcomes.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the English 7 Roadmap. To really get today's lesson, we kind of need to zoom out for a second and contextualize it. Earlier in the year, you spent 6 weeks mastering short stories. Now, we are deep into the drama unit. So, this specific lesson actually acts like a bridge between the two formats. It requires you to use what you learned in the past about narrative structures to understand performance texts today.
We're actually doing a direct, worked comparison between these two formats right now. We want to figure out exactly how tracking down evidence for a character's motive changes when you swap a storybook for a play's script.
Let's dive right into Section 2, Unpacking Short Stories. Think about this. How do small story choices reveal large ideas about people and choices? In short stories, the author has a very limited amount of space to create a whole world and drive a conflict. That means absolutely every single word is a conscious choice that you, as the reader, need to analyze. And this brings us right to our key vocabulary for the lesson, motive and evidence. In a short story, your evidence for a character's motive is internal. You heavily rely on the narrator's point of view to understand the conflict. Think of the narrator as your personal tour guide. They literally tell you what characters are thinking, feeling, and even hiding. This makes gathering evidence for character motives a very internal, reading-focused process. When you tackle the leveled practice for today's lesson, you're going to put all of this into action. You'll track plot and conflict, analyze character motivation, explain theme development, and use some highly precise literary vocabulary. You'll be asked to dig up direct quotes from the narrator explaining exactly why a character acts the way they do, using those internal details to build a rock-solid case. Moving right along to Section 3, Bringing Drama to Life. So ask yourself, how does a script show action, character, and conflict differently from a story? Because when you're analyzing drama, you are no longer reading someone's private thoughts. To find evidence for a character's motive, you have to analyze what is essentially a blueprint for a public performance. You have to figure out how conflict is driven forward without anyone explicitly telling you what the characters are feeling inside.
There's a super common misconception here, actually. People often think that if a character doesn't explicitly state how they feel, we just can't know their true motive. But in drama, the absence of a narrator absolutely doesn't mean an absence of evidence. We simply have to decode scene structures, dialogue, and stage directions instead. You get to be the detective, reading between the lines of what people are saying to each other out loud.
As you work through today's leveled practice on drama, your whole evidence-gathering strategy shifts. You will interpret stage directions, analyze dialogue, compare drama and prose, and support performance choices with evidence. You can't just point to internal descriptions anymore. You must support your claims about character motives using their physical actions and spoken dialogue right from the script. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Story versus Script. Let's do a worked comparison to really lock this in. Say a character is angry. In a short story, you rely on the narrator's point of view and descriptive prose. The text might just flat out tell you, he was furious. But in a script, that relies entirely on character dialogue and scene structure. The character actually has to shout, or say something incredibly cutting, or physically slam a door. The motives driving the conflict have to be externalized. And that brings us to the absolute secret weapon of drama analysis, stage directions. These are the instructions in the text of a play indicating the movement, position, or tone of an actor, or even the sound effects and lighting. Because there is no narrator, you have to heavily analyze these stage directions to understand the character's true motivations. If the dialogue says, "I'm fine," but the stage direction says the character clenches their fists and looks away, well, that stage direction is providing the real evidence for the character's internal conflict. Let's bring it all together in Section 5, Your Learning Outcomes. To summarize what we've covered today, When it comes to how we learn about characters, Unit 2 short stories rely on character change and narrator POV, while Unit 5 drama relies on dialogue and stage directions. Your core task goes from tracking plot and conflict on a page to supporting performance choices for a stage. And the analysis type shifts from internal motivations to external actions. You are basically learning two distinct languages for how evidence drives conflict.
All right, before you wrap up, it's time for the linked lesson check for understanding, which is built around 6 core questions. You're going to apply everything we just talked about to 6 specific excerpts, deciding if the evidence provided for a character's motive is internal or external.
As you head into that lesson check, I want to leave you with a question. If you had to tell the story of your life so far, would it make a better short story or a drama? Are your life's biggest conflicts mostly internal thoughts and quiet choices that a narrator would have to explain? Or is your life filled with bold actions, explosive dialogue, and vivid stage directions? Thinking about how you would tell your own story is the very first step to mastering how others tell theirs. Good luck, and go crush that lesson check.